Not only put out the another guy.
Okay, good. Off and running. So thank you, everybody. Okay, so you've got your key terms for Buddhism, same as in Hinduism. You have another week for the Hinduism quiz, so don't worry about that. And I got one wrong, Kate, so it's hard. I mean, it's hard to get, you have to get those things in order. And that was just after I finished the quiz. So, you know, I was in really good shape to take the quiz. But it's a bit of a challenge. It'll be the average of, if you choose to do it again, it'll be the average of 2. And so, but if you just get it, you know, hit it out of the ballpark first time, then you're in good shape. So you can just leave it and not do it the second time. So feel free to do it that way. Very, very good. T is great. Thanks, Bub. It's nice to have Lynette here. She's had a struggling day with her arthritis. So. Excellent. Did you have a chance to get into the Awakening book, Ian? I'm not sure you had it yet. Last time we checked. Okay.
The Awakening book, is that? Okay, yeah, that's the one that you just asked us recently.
Yeah, I think, and you were, Kate, you were listening to it in the car, and that's a great way to pour in reading when you're driving as many hours as you drove. So that's a great way to do it. So I've got some other Buddhist books that I have in my library. You can pass those around, look at them, and just a few other resources that might be of some help.
Just came home with this one.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. So, but I thought the Awakening would be the best for this time. And so anything happened this week that was related to the class or what we have been talking about?
Last year I was in a ski race and I won a prize, and it was like too big for me. It was a nice jacket, and I've been hanging on to it for almost a year, trying to sell it because it was brand new and tagged on and everything. It was really nice. And when I first got it, I was like, oh, I could give it to my brother. He's a little bit bigger than I am, and it probably fit him. And I didn't. And I finally was like, I'm going to feel so much better. So kind of a little bit of personal gain there, I guess, for personal reasons. But I was like, it'll feel so much better to me to just give it to him as opposed to selling it. And so that was my giving or my offering, my donation this week. Yeah.
It's hard to quantify the feelings there, but they do feel good.
Yeah. Like, I get to, I'm in connection with my brother, and he was really excited to receive it and thankful. And as the years go on, like, I hope to see that it serves him. And if not, then he can give it to somebody else.
Okay.
But yeah, as opposed to like you sell it to somebody and never see him again. Cool, I hope you enjoy it.
Kate, did you have anything that sort of clicked for Buddhism this week, or this past week? Oh, look at the yellow scarf. Look at me. I'm still a brain dead one. She's got a yellow. There you go. Was that purposeful? Yay! Okay. I brought my orange-headed wife. How's that?
Yeah. Did it again. You probably never.
That is one of the tough ones. Very good, guys. Wonderfully done. So now, now I'm embarrassed. Good job. Good job. I always like to embarrass myself. So anything else you're thinking of other than you thought through?
No, I mean, I have just been running around, honestly, like it's just, I've been caught up in the river of life lately and not had a lot of time for my studies and focusing on myself and that sort of thing. I do know that after I've listened to Awakening the Buddha Within, I think that those concepts are still kind of reverberating. It's permeating my day-to-day, and those Buddhist ideas and beliefs are definitely still floating around, but I would say it's not been a huge focus for me.
No, you've been incredibly busy. So we're glad you made it today. And so a couple things that have fallen off. I think, Ian, you're pretty well up to date as far as the comparisons and everything else.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm not current on as of this evening is I have not written an outline for
the project. So tonight was the draft of the project. I'm again with adult students. I don't get my shirt in a knot if I hear the reality of life setting in on them. So you're not freshmen, 18-year-old freshmen that we're trying to adjust and keep their character building going in the classroom. So get her done. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I see honest effort, that's really what I'm looking for in this class, as opposed to a timeline that is not workable. So that's sort of how I like to do it. One thing on the comparison, and I don't know if you saw my email today.
I didn't go through it. I saw it. I received it.
I didn't see the comparison to the previous religion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I brought the the outline that I use, and I don't know why it sort of fell off the map with you. I could see the meaning of it, but I couldn't see the distinction from a previous religion.
Interesting.
And I don't know if you did it, and I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember using this same template.
Oh, okay. So I'm not that. If you did it, I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
So, however we can do this, let's get that done.
Okay.
And I'll regrade it. Okay.
Cool.
So that would be fun.
It looked because I received this template, like you put it on
Sure.
iLearn, and it looked a slight bit different. I think just these boxes were kind of shortened up, but I went ahead and used it, and I have my computer with me, so
Yeah, I don't think it translated well. Whatever, however we translated it to your computer,
yeah.
I think there's something missing, and I didn't see the distinctions. Okay, so assuming they're done, but that's the issue. Figure out a way to get me the assignment. So do you remember that assignment? And the key is, remember that now we're comparing it to Hinduism. We're not comparing it to your personal awareness, whether it's science or anything else. We're comparing to the previous religion. And so when you're reading and doing the assignment, remember to read it from that perspective. Find something that reminds you of Hinduism in some way, either an adjustment or similarity or however you're going to do it. Always read this assignment when you're reading the scripture with that, that connects with Hinduism in some way. Okay, so that's crucial for this assignment, otherwise it gets quite hard. Okay, anybody see any movies?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Considering tonight and the last time we were in class, and I get excited when I get reminded about watching a movie. Oh yeah, I could go watch a movie, and then totally forget.
Hey, I got an assignment to go watch a movie. What kind of life is this?
I know.
Anyway, and the one we talked about that was really very much a part of our conversation last week was Little Buddha, and I don't think it's on my list. So that's a Keanu Reeves one. So it's still a B movie. He didn't really grow it into the A rank, but it's interesting to watch it from a of Buddhist perspective and how Tibetan Buddhism functions. And the distinction of Tibetan Buddhism, we'll talk about that in a minute, is the involvement of the Lama. And so that there's a rebirth within the Lama. And so with the mind, that additional element is transmitting into a new being, a new creature. And so in addition to all the books, and the books that we tend to read within Buddhism aren't the classic Buddhist doctrinal books. The Tripitaka is the name for the word of the Buddha. And so the Buddha told his followers that the truth, the Dharma, was to be their leader. And so they assembled his teachings, whatever he said. And so you'll see that what the Buddha taught is my sense of a very short rendition of parts of the Tripitaka. And that's that one. I use that one a lot when I'm thinking or reading or reviewing. I find it quite helpful. And I'm just sort of getting into some of these other texts. And so the Tripitaka means the Pitaka means basket. So we have 3 baskets of Buddhism. We have the collected teachings of the Buddha, and that's the Sutra Pitaka. And that's what I think is my book there. Oops. That's what I think is my book there, is coming out of the Sutra Pitaka. There was also rules for living of monks and nuns, the Vinaya Pitaka. And then there's scholarly points of doctrine. And I've really not the Abhidharma Pitaka. I've never seen that one, and I'd love to sort of figure out what that is, because that's the nuancing. How do you take, what the Buddha said about something, like the enlightenment or the mind of the Buddha? Yes, thank you. This is the final few slides from last week's lecture.
Okay.
It's not tonight's lecture yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't identify. Thank you, Kate, for figuring that out. Okay, so those are your and so if you're ever in a used bookstore and you happen to see one of these and you remember your professor, I'm always appreciative of students that find stuff for me, and so some of these texts I haven't discovered yet. Okay.
So you're looking for these texts?
Well, I think I've got the first one. I think that's it's probably much broader. So I think the Sutra Pitaka I've got, but I don't have the rules and I don't have the scholarly points of doctrine. I'm assuming that that's where that book comes from. It's fairly good. So, but I'd love to. But if I had a copy of the Vinaya Pitaka in English, that'd be fun too. So because my time to do Sanskrit, some of these other languages, done in this life. Okay, and so what we discover when we look at the movement of Buddhism is that it really, again, happening in this region of India, and it really just left. I mean, it migrated all the way down to Sri Lanka. It migrated to Thailand, Vietnam, and Burma, Sumatra. It is an old map. But it particularly migrated to China, Korea, and Japan. But it really left. So Tibet, for Tibetan Buddhism, Sri Lanka with some of the more conservative renditions of Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism. So it was a migratory. Why do you think it moved so well? What is it about Buddhism that moves so well?
Fairly universal. I think easily translatable across different cultures. Maybe it's not necessarily a god that you're worshiping. It's just a principle.
Sure. And if you're worshiping a god, why does that become a political threat?
Because there's a clear difference. Like there's a symbol, there's an object, there's a thing that we believe in specifically, and you believe in something else.
And so there is no political threat to a leader. They can impose their own symbols. They can impose their demands for reverence, veneration, and Buddhism goes, we don't care. Do what you're going to do. There's a real sense of laissez-faire within Buddhism. And how did Buddhism react to the story of the happy Buddha, the fat Buddha? How did Buddhism react to that story? So it was another person, 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later, got his own imagery.
Mm-hmm.
How did Buddhism react to that?
Was there a reaction?
There was.
There was.
Yeah. Rejection or acceptance?
I imagine acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When again, Chinese Buddhist temples, they have the happy Buddha sitting there. And they don't say anything about it. They don't say whether this was, a true symbol of the Gautama. They just have the big old happy. I mean, the one in Portland must have been 3 tons. It's a huge thing. And that was the first thing you see as you come into one of the Buddhist sections of the temple. And so they're completely comfortable with it. We can sit and analyze, hey, it doesn't look like the real Buddha. Well, who cares? So again, laissez-faire as it comes. And then when you go into the Buddhist temple, you go into another room, and there's a Chinese deity sitting there. With all sorts of flowers and fruit around this Chinese deity. Guan Li is who it was in that temple. And then you're going, the Buddha didn't like we'll talk about it a little more tonight. But when it comes to the other gods, he just pushes it aside, just doesn't give it much thought. And where does he want his followers to focus on? He doesn't want them to focus in the godly questions, the theology, whether there is a God, there isn't a God,
The experience.
He wants to focus on this experience. And when is the experience happening?
Now.
Right now.
Yeah.
So there's an immediacy with Buddhism that you easily lose when you're dealing with deities. They're in the future, they're in the past. They can be in the present because you're worshiping them. But it isn't as much. You'll find that they don't stay in the present as easily. You almost have to force adherence of God or gods to be in the present. So Buddhism has all sorts of reasons why. What I perceive Buddhism to be is it creates the soil of the country, but it lets all sorts of things from the past grow through it. So the peasants were completely happy. They can get their how do I live today from Buddhism, and they could venerate their ancestors and their ancient deities, and Buddhism didn't care. And so it just allowed all sorts of things to happen in the average life of a peasant that was completely comfortable for them. They didn't make demands on the peasantry. They just gave them some good ideas. And so that's in my sense why Buddhism did such a good job of moving through these areas. And then each area adjusted it a little bit. And so it was adjustable. And so what we discover is that there's 3 branches, or quite a few branches, to Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism is what we would see in that southern part of India, Sri Lanka, those kinds of places. So, and Theravada means the path of the elders. Very conservative. So they're attempting to do the original teachings of the Buddha. How did our most recent Supreme Court justice get on the court? What was her pathway to getting on the court? What did she convince the senators that she would be like in her judicial philosophy?
I missed all that.
Did you not catch it?
Mm-hmm.
That she would be an originalist to the Constitution. She would read the Constitution in what she felt would be its original intent for the Constitution. She would not, therefore, she is considered conservative in her philosophy. And so those that focus on the original teachings, they're trying to read it in the original language instead of all the other languages that Buddhism was translated into as it was moving through all these other countries. And so you'd read it in the Pali language, and so that being the original teachings. And so you have a conservative wing, and so when it comes to women in service, what do you think the Theravada Buddhists are going to say? What conservatives have said in virtually every religion.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a hierarchy. And so the more conservative the religion, the more hierarchy you get when it comes to women. And they aren't allowed to do as much. And so you'll find that in every religion. Classic in Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, in Islam, all of them. The more conservative, the more there is a focus on male dominance in the structure of the religion. And so the Theravada are much more involved there. Mahayana is what's called the greater vehicle, and they're quite liberal. They're open to all people, monks and lay alike. And so this is what makes things really interesting. The secret teachings Buddha gave to his most advanced disciples. When you read something different from another community, you're going to get a different religion. We see that in Latter-day Saints. When you read some secret teachings that Joseph Smith gives to his people, you're going to get a strikingly different Christianity than you are if you don't have secret teachings that you deliver to your people. And so that's classic two distinctions. They're going to do it in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is more generally read within India, so a little more accessible to all people. If you have to learn a new language like Pali, then you're creating barriers to people really understanding the religion. And so when you translate it into Sanskrit, then you've got something. You have a bodhisattva movement within the greater vehicle. Anybody notice we have a IPA called Bodhisattva? Yes, very popular IPA is called Bodhisattva, and that means Buddha in the making. If you go into a Chinese temple, and I didn't see it in the Tibetan worship center, but the Chinese temple, when you'd go into the main sanctuary, there were thousands of bodhisattvas on the wall, just thousands. So they made these little icons, idols, of a bodhisattva from the ages past, and it goes on the wall. And there were thousands of them. What's a bodhisattva? An enlightened one who reaches nirvana, but remains in samsara to help others. And this can be a celestial being, but it's really the saints of Buddhism. It's those that are really good people, helping people, clearly are enlightened, and yet they don't go into the nirvana existence. They stay in the existence of the people so they can help people. So the bodhisattva is a really wonderful term. So I do a little lesson anytime anybody goes and buys their bodhisattva over at Alright, hey, you know what that means?
Yeah.
And they go, that's really cool. Maybe I can do that too.
Isn't there like a slight difference in the spelling, or is it the same?
Oh, it's almost the same.
I thought there was like this. I thought the beer put like an F in it or something. Instead of
Okay, I'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've compared the spelling. There probably is. But it's an Indian Pale Ale. Okay, so you can see all the connections that they're trying to make. And so that's sort of fun. Okay, so bodhisattvas, it's an important concept. And the saints of the Catholic Church would be a similar concept. People that are deeply close to God, and instead of just going to the monastery and spending the rest of their life in prayer, they go out in the town and they do good things. And so, and this is one of the lessons of, and I'm going to sort of drop back to Hinduism, because the lesson of Mother Teresa, I think, is important in Hinduism. She had a tremendous impact on Calcutta. And so, are you aware of Mother Teresa and who she is?
What?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Great person that helped the poor, primarily the untouchables of Indian society. And so,
lepers?
pardon?
Like lepers?
Anybody. Yeah. Anybody in the underprivileged of Indian society.
Yeah, I've not heard the term untouchables.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the fifth caste of Hindu society are those that are the untouchables. They are considered the dirt underneath the feet of all other four castes. So they have just they're so low they don't even get their own caste out of it. And so this is the deeply poor. This is the ones that run the garbage dumps. These are the ones that light the fires. These are often the ones that are your handling meat for those that want meat. So they're dirty all the time, and so they're an interesting. So Mother Teresa specifically wanted to help that class because they just had nothing, and they lived and died a terrible death. And so when she saw an untouchable in the streets, a beggar, a leper, she would reach down and say, hey, I'm going to help you. Now, why would the average Hindu say that's silly?
Because it's their karma to be in that life.
Okay.
So you're actually taking them farther away from liberation if you're diverting their path and from what they're supposed to be doing, which is serving the upper classes.
Okay, so the Hindu perspective is going to be it's going to create bad karma, and it will. So they're gonna avoid it from a bad karma point of view. Okay, why else might they avoid it? And just say, this is silly. Why are you helping these people? Because to us, that's instinctive. We have, again, our context from a religious point of view is the Christian love your neighbor. That's the context of the American assistance to helping others. You assume you should help others, and you often feel guilty if you don't. That comes out of the Christian spirituality of American perceptions of helping, the Good Samaritan perceptions. So she took that to India and started applying it. And yet, she would have been critiqued for that. Bad karma. What other reasons would have caused people to be almost frustrated with her? And it took years before people emulated her or wanted to be nuns with her so that she could build her nunneries with people that would help. It's better if you die faster in Hinduism.
Mm.
Why?
You can move it.
You have a shot of moving on. If you're trapped in the fifth caste and you have been a good person and you're doing the best you can as a fifth caste, if you die, you've got a shot to getting into fourth caste. Okay? And so dying quick is the perspective of those who have a horrible life. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so it really is quite shattering for Western thought to realize that because of your religious context, that whereas you want them to live a full, meaningful life. Why? Because you've only got one life. But if you live in a terrible situation, die quick. You got a next life coming. Might come in if you've been a good person. You got good karma flowing around you. Boom, you'll come back and you'll be in a better place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Totally different thinking. And so the Bodhisattvas of Hindu, within the Indian context, are really, really intriguing. Tantric, Vajrayana. The Tantric are the elaborate rituals, intense sensual meditative experiences, often deeply sexual in the way they're portrayed. And so your Tantric branch of Buddhism has gone off in that particular direction. Your lesser branch or your diamond vehicle is Tibetan. So your Tibetan Buddhism is considered the diamond vehicle or the lesser branch. So you have the greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle. And so these include the shamans and the spiritualism and the lamas. And so they've kept their ancient teachers prior to Buddhism, the lamas prior to Buddhism with their ancient teaching. And they weave the lamas into their understanding. And so this is a Tibetan Buddhism book. And so the assumption of lamas is there. But when you look at conservative Buddhism, you don't have a teacher like that. You are to be your own teacher. You are to learn from reading the teachings of the Buddha. You don't have a leader like that. Very similar to Shia Islam, where they expect you to have a teacher, as opposed to Sunni Islam, where you're to do it yourself. Very similar. You get the very similar pathways in religion.
Why is it considered a lesser branch? Just smaller population-wise?
It is smaller. Yeah, I think that's a fair speculation on why it's called lesser.
Because when I read diamond vehicle, I don't really think of lesser vehicle. I think of like, something that lasts forever. That's,
It could be.
powerful.
It could be a sense of oppression from Mahayana Buddhism, where they don't do it like Mahayana does.
Yeah.
And therefore, we're the big boys.
Yeah.
You aren't doing it well, we're just going to push you down again. Mm-hmm. When we look at American Buddhism, American Buddhism tends to focus on Japanese forms of Buddhism and some Chinese forms. Zen Buddhism, which focuses on meditation and intuition when they study the self. And so American Buddhism tends to be Zen Buddhism. And that's because all the other parts of Buddhism, that when we were going through it last week, we were looking at the precepts of Buddhism, and we realized, celibacy, not a part of American Buddhism. Let's see, it was rare as to what original precepts of Buddhism American Buddhism was prepared to live with. Nonviolence, sure. And so they've been picking and choosing, and they really like the Zen Buddhism. And when you see the literature of the 70s as Buddhism was floating into the scene of American spiritual life, the Zen Buddhism was a dominating literature. as it was coming in. So it dominated in a lot of ways. It really resonated with American Buddhist thinking. Okay. Okay, so you can grab the other sheet. It's a good time for a break. Why don't we take a minute and do a break? So it's 17 minutes after. Why don't we come back in 5 minutes? Oh,
Oh, we need more hot water?
Yeah, we need a hot water pot,
Okay.
so that's
we're missing
our
teapot.
our teapot had a hole
Electric
in it.
teapot.
Our electric teapot had a hole in it, guys. And I went, oh, here. Not this. You want to make some dinner here?
Yeah, I would love some hot water to put in that soup.
Oh, good for you. You like it spicy, do ya?
Sometimes. Oh yeah, man, I got this like Cajun shrimp macaroni and cheese last night.
Oh dear me.
It was
Blew
day.
your ears out?
Woo! Yeah. Not only was it spicy, it was rich, really rich.
Is that right? Did you enjoy it?
I did. I can only take a few bites, honestly. I have to save it. Are there forks in there, Brian?
I can get you one.
Yeah.
There will be a portion.
Okay.
Oh, help us. Just getting over my injury many weeks ago. First night of decent sleep last night. Haven't been able to sleep on my right side, and I've realized I have spent most of my time sleeping on the right side. So it's been so I'm feeling better, but when you're coming out, you just sort of know you haven't gotten enough sleep for a long time.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's rough. But that's busy as you are too. I'm sure.
Ooh. Oh, speaking about my busyness, let's wait for Ian to get in and update what's going on. Because it's busy. So just an update on our trauma intervention program. And it's been sort of rocketing along. There is a trauma, what's called a TIP coordinator in Boise, and she's nationally trained as a TIP volunteer. And the quick way of sort of saying, well, what do they do in the field when they're called with first responders? And the way they define it quickly is they provide emotional first aid to everyone, whoever needs it. First responders, trauma victims, family, people that come on the scene. They're providing emotional first aid is one of the easiest definitions. And so, she got really excited because she's got a home up at Donnelly, and she's always tried to figure out how she could. She's got a second home at Donnelly, and she's always tried to figure out how she could help up here because she's recognized it. And so she's been talking to the fire chief. The fire chief is talking to all the fire chiefs. The police chief, he talked to the police chief, and the police chief, he came from the University or Texas Tech University. He says, yeah, we had TIP volunteers. They were great. So he's all in. The police chief then said, well, we need a budget. So he's dived into his budget to make sure the first necessary revenue sources are already taken care of. And so it just rocketed. It was just reverberating all through the area and doing very, very well. And so he's talking it up to his EMTs already. So I'm really pleased with what's happening on this. And they're going to need 12 volunteers to do a training session. So that's going to be hard in this. It's going to be just dang hard to put 12 people in the room at the same time for a training session. And it's 55 hours. So it's quite an investment in training time. So, wow, we've got a lot of hurdles ahead, but it really, really seems to be going well. My board has approved what I call a social trauma program. So that we take the TIP idea and build on it, something even more meaningful. So now that you become a long-term assistant to people, because my critique of the TIP program is you're really in it for 2 or 3 hours in the trauma scene.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay.
Yeah, trauma impacts.
They're in trauma, and they're in trauma for a long time. And so to really engage in helping people in a long-term fashion takes more than. So that program, once I get it cleared out of the Department of Education, I'll start highlighting it a little more. But I'm deep into one of my projects. You asked me how my projects are, and as everybody knows, I'm in way too many of those. Coming well. So I'm just finishing up actually how do you create a 5-year plan so that we can do this, and so that's what I'm up to my eyeballs in right now. So, comments or thoughts on that one?
It's relieving and empowering to hear that this kind of program and these kind of positions are wanted and
Yeah.
it's being received. So it feels, your news right now feels like a great step forward.
Thank you. I asked the police chief, why are he, I mean, he jumped into this. And I said, why are you doing this? Why is this so important to you? And he said, I just came out of a situation where we walked into a trauma scene. And he said, it's almost the same. She said, that almost the same thing happened to Valley County Sheriff recently, where we had a person whose spouse died, and they were from another place. They had no context at all. He said it took us 4 hours after we arrived on scene trying to get all the people contacted because the woman was a basket case. Couldn't, she was just traumatized. And so he said, I spent 4 hours trying to help her phone all her contacts, start figuring out how to get home and doing all the things necessary to get this woman to do the next step. And she said, and the police chief had just done the same thing. And he said, the number of times we would have sent out a volunteer this summer is crazy. He said, this is really needed. So, okay. And I go back to my computer and start doing all the work necessary to make this happen. Really engaged. And because there's equally as challenging a training program for the first responders to know what to do with the second responders, so that there's good linkage in a scene. And so it's quite the project we're wandering now. So very, very pleased. Okay. Buddhist Worlds of Meaning is our second section of all of our lectures. And here you hear the three refuges of Buddhism, the three refuges. Where do you go when you need a refuge? Where do you put yourself? And there's three places that they want you to place yourself. They want you to place yourself in the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha. They want you to place yourself in the Dharma and what that means. And they want you to achieve nirvana. So those are the three refuges of Buddhism. And if you go into a Buddhist temple, you'll always light three incense as you arrive. You'll light them and place them in the sand, typically, of a large pot outside of the Buddhist temples. And that represents the Buddha and the Dharma and nirvana. And so, though nirvana can also often be placed with the Sangha. And so they'll go the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But there's an ultimate that they're seeking. And so Buddhism, as we've talked about, doesn't really want to deal with answers about the ultimate that arrive in an answer about God. There's a wonderful story in the Buddhist literature about a young man that just wanted to talk about the eternal. Maluk Yaputa, by name, is well known for for asking the Buddha 10 classic questions and demanding answers. So Malaputa got up from his afternoon meditation, went to the Buddha, saluted him, sat on one side and said, "Sir, when I was alone meditating, this thought occurred to me. These are the problems unexplained, put aside or rejected by the Blessed One. Namely, is the universe eternal or is it not eternal? Is the universe finite or is it infinite? Is soul the same as body or is soul one thing and body another? And does the Tathagata exist after death or does he not exist after death? Or does he both at the same time exist and not exist after death? Or does he both at the same time not exist and not exist? These problems the Blessed One does not explain to me. This does not please me. I do not appreciate it. It says, I will go to the Blessed One and ask him about this matter. If the Blessed One explains them to me, then I will continue to follow the holy life under him. If he does not explain them, I will leave the order and go away. If the Blessed One knows that the universe is eternal, let him explain it to me so. If the Blessed One knows that the universe is not eternal, let him say so. If the Blessed One does not know whether the universe is eternal or not, then for a person who does not know, it is straightforward to say, I do not know, I do not see. The Buddha's reply to Malunyaputa should do good to many millions in the world today who are wasting valuable time on such metaphysical questions and unnecessarily disturbing their peace of mind. Did I ever tell you, Malunyaputa? Come, Malunyaputa, lead the holy life under me. I will explain these questions to you? No, sir. Then, Malunyaputa, even you, did you tell me, sir, I will lead the life under the Blessed One, and the Blessed One will explain these questions to me? No, sir. Even now, Malunyaputa, I do not tell you, come and lead the holy life under me. I will explain these questions to you. But you do not tell me either, sir, I will lead the holy life under the Blessed One, and he will explain these questions to me. Under these circumstances, you foolish one, who refuses whom? Malunyaputa, if anyone says, I will lead the holy life under the Blessed One until he explains these questions, he may die with these questions unanswered by the Tathagata. Suppose, Malunyaputa, a man is wounded by a poison arrow, and his friends and relatives bring him to a surgeon. Suppose a man should say to them, I will not let this arrow be taken out until I know who shot me, whether he was a Kasita of the warrior class, or Brahmin of the priestly class, or Yasya of the trading and agriculture class, or a Sudra of the lower class. What his name and his family may be, whether he is tall, short, or of medium stature, whether his complexion is black, brown, or golden, from which town or city or village he comes from. I will not let this arrow be taken out until I know the kind of bow on which I was shot, the kind of bowstring used, the kind of arrow, what kind of feather was used in the arrow, and what kind of material the point of the arrow was made. Malunyaputa, that man would die without knowing any of these things. Even so, Malunyaputa, if anyone says, I shall not follow the holy life under the Blessed One, unless he answers these questions, such as whether the universe is eternal or not, he will die with these questions, unanswered by the Tathagata. Then the Buddha explains to him that the holy life does not depend on these. Whatever opinion one might hold about these problems, there is birth, old age, decay, death, sorrow, lamentations, pain, grief, and distress. Therefore, bear in mind that I have explained as explained, and what I have not explained as unexplained. What are the things that I have not explained? He goes through. Why have I not explained them? Because it is not useful. It is not fundamentally connected with the spiritual holy life. It is not conducive to aversion, detachment, cessation, tranquility, deep penetration, full realization, or nirvana. That is why I have not told them to you. There's no answer like God within Buddhism. It's just not there. Just a wonderful passage of a person whose mind is filled with questions. And they aren't questions that take them to a good place. Is there suffering around you? What are you going to do about it? Are you living a life of passion, attempting to achieve things? What are you going to do about it? And so those are the things that the Buddha was wanting. And so what's ultimate? Seek refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, resulting in nirvana. Extinction of the three fires: passion, aversion, and ignorance. Have you gotten? Colton was constantly struggling with the word passion, because our society loves the word passion. Have you had a chance to sort of work your way through why the ancient philosophers weren't so excited about passion?
Um, well, I don't know maybe why they did it. Not why there was such an aversion to passion then, but I feel like passion can be somewhat of an addiction or an excuse these days to forget about everything else. You know, forgetting about like you know, your basic needs that need to be taken care of. Can be sometimes like you devote so much to this one thing you're so passionate about that all these other areas in your life suffer.
Excellent.
And so I guess it like lends itself to like, passion lends itself to not such a holistic view and way of living.
The simple answer for many of the philosophers was it takes you to the wrong place. And you've nicely articulated the wrong places that you can end up. And if you think about passion and your sexuality, that can take you to a whole lot of the wrong place. I've always said brains trump, our biology trumps brains. And that's sort of my way of saying, don't let the passions take you to the wrong place when it comes to your relationships. They will, your biology is designed to do other things than build quality relationships. And so then you end up in those places and you go, wow, my passion took me a strange place. Yeah. And so that's the challenge of the passions. And so if aversion, ignorance, and so those are what you're trying to put out in your life within the Buddhist perspective. And so it makes it an intriguing part of, and again, aversion, staying away from people that need help, you need to conquer that. And the Buddha was trying to not just be a guru in the forest. He was trying to take what he had learned and pass it on to others. And so that sense of averting yourself from people that need your new knowledge is clearly a part of Buddhism. And that cause, that migratory path, as opposed to Hinduism, is still stuck in India. Why? Because there's no sense of aversion. There's no wanting to avert yourself from taking it and teaching Hinduism to the rest of the world. Didn't exist. So it still sits in India. And so aversion was the doctrine that helped drive people down the road to the next village to tell them about Buddhist teachings. So you succeed at release from rebirth, you experience non-self. Now, what's non-self compared to Hinduism? What was the doctrine of Hinduism that now Buddhism is giving you a new word? No self, non-self. We had the Atman, okay? And so the Atman was what you were chasing in yourself. That in the Western world we call the soul. That precious commodity somewhere deep within you that contained all within Christianity, it contained the divine from Socrates, all the teachings of previous generations that were deep within you. Those were all there, but they're covered over by all the dirt of the generations. And you have to work very hard to drill down to it to find it. That was Socrates, a Greek philosopher, which very much came into American philosophy. And so Buddhism is going to go after a no self. So what was the critique of Hinduism and the Atman that Buddhism is clearly launching here?
Essentially the opposite. There's not self. there's like not something that is yours that's unique to you. It just is. You're just one with everything.
When you focus on yourself, what do we call that?
Um,
It's even got a title. What's the title? When you're constantly focusing on yourself. No, the fancy word is narcissism. What's the very simple word? Selfish. Yeah. And so that's clearly what the Buddha realized was happening with all the gurus in the forest. They were extraordinarily selfish. And when you look at his own life, you see he walked away from everything. He was and he realized that selfishness was being driven because of the self, the soul, the inversion, the looking within. So he's trying to drive them out so that they will not be looking within all the time. They're getting something, but he's going to localize it in a different place. He's going to localize it in the mind. And he's going to give that almost anatomical shift from the soul to the mind as to how Buddhism shifts out of that self to a no self. Well, what are you going to focus on? Your mind, and using your mind to communicate to others. And so there's going to be that intriguing shift within Buddhism. And emptiness. And so that emptiness, which had similarities to Hindu release of everything. So you get that sense of emptiness as well. They have nothing. So you can't avert yourself from others because you need them for food, because you're empty. And so that sense of emptiness pulls you out of your monasteries, pulls you into the community, and allows you to participate in the community. There's a traditional Buddhist prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha until I attain enlightenment. By merit accumulation from practicing generosity and other perfections, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Whoa, those last two lines. Every phrase has got boatloads of issues. By merit accumulation from practicing generosity. What's that? What did you do this week that is a participant in that thinking?
yeah, giving.
You gave your coat.
Yeah.
Okay? What happened because you gave the coat?
I merited my good karma.
Your good karma was floating, okay? But it didn't just stop with you. What happened? What other good karma floated out from that? You gave them the coat.
Right, and they received it.
They received the coat, so they were doing good karma. They could have said, stuff you, drop dead, I don't need a coat.
Yeah.
Especially a coat from you. Bad karma, okay? Good karma receiving the coat. Then what happened? What could happen?
Oh, well, they wear the coat.
Now they have two coats.
Yeah.
They wear the coat. They feel warm. Good karma, okay? So they're getting good functional use out of the coat. Now they have two coats.
They could give the other coat.
They could give their old coat to the thrift store, and now out into the community it goes. Because you see how the domino effect works, and they're just and that kind of good karma is like is being it's being monetized in a functional way, and merit becomes the stone. If you were to collect stones from all the good karma from giving one coat to somebody, you could start seeing a whole beach of stones that are being accumulated as a result of the good deed that you did. And so merit accumulation is just a way to explain all of the good karma in a physical way, to let people know that there's amazing waves of goodness that comes out from one pebble in a pond. Those waves just flow out. So merit accumulation is a way of describing that. Within Buddhism, there's the desire to accumulate merit. And so that's what the first phrase talks about. The second phrase, and other perfections. By merit accumulation from practicing generosity and other perfections. Buddhism is not afraid to use the word perfect. Americans are terrified of the word. Okay? They will tell themselves over and over what when it comes to perfection.
I'm not perfect.
I'm not perfect. Okay? We have this wonderful sense of I need to give myself this great inferiority complex so that I can be a humble person or something. All philosophies and all religions don't have that perspective. They all use the word perfect in an appropriate way. They define it far better than Americans do. When they say, I'm not perfect, you're saying, I'm not God. Okay, we know that. You're not God. God is perfect, and God does everything perfectly. Therefore, I'm not perfect, therefore, I'm not God. It is sort of the logic they work through when you say, well, what do you mean by that? I'm a human being. Yeah, you're not God. So the logic is so horrific when it comes to perfection, because all of the ancient philosophers used the term perfection so that it would be productive in the lives of people. The ancient philosophers, when they used the term perfection, we would use the word excellence. Okay, and so grab your pen. Okay, is your pen perfect?
Yeah.
Now, why could you say that? Would you say that, okay, that your pen is perfect?
Yeah.
Okay.
It serves its purpose.
It serves the purpose that its creator intended, right? The definition of perfection in all the religions and philosophy is if you are accomplishing the intention of your creator, then you are perfect. Okay? If a master craftsman built that pen, put it in your hands, and you use it, it's perfect. Now, when it runs out of ink, is it imperfect? And you're mad because you're halfway through the sentence and there's no ink there.
No, it was made to run out.
It was designed to run out. So even when it runs out of ink and you're mad at it, that's its design. It's still perfect because now if I use that pen I got to lift the table and I'm going to put a rock under it and I'm going to lift the table with your pen and it breaks. This pen sucks. Has it lost its perfection? It wasn't designed to lift, but we're mad at it because we're using it in ways that we thought it might work, but it doesn't work. So therefore, it's imperfect. No, it's perfect because it's doing exactly what it's great. And Aristotle would add one more word, and it's doing it well. So it's not just doing it. It's not just functioning. It feels good. It writes well. It accomplishes. If it was skipping every letter, you'd be mad at it, and you would say this is an imperfect pen because it's not doing what it should do as a pen should accomplish. That's an imperfect pen. But if it flows beautifully and you can write your name beautifully with the pen, it is a perfect pen. Okay? What's a horse? What's a perfect horse? A horse that runs well. So therefore, what's a perfect human being? A human being that lives their life well. So you'll always see the term perfection in the definitions of the philosophies of the ancients, and Americans lose something when they go into this I can never be perfect nonsense. Because if you can't be, you won't be. I mean, if you've set your mind to it. So the ancients gave you the way of thinking about perfection that is very encouraging and leads to excellence. And they actually give you a path, which the Buddha is trying to do. If you do all this stuff and do it well, you go to nirvana. Cool. Now, it's possible, it's doable, you just don't walk away from it because I'm a human being and I'm imperfect, and therefore I give myself an excuse to screw up. That's not the psychology of the ancients. The ancients are, you are given all the skills to arrive in excellence. Therefore, you can be a perfect human being. So we'll go through this conversation through many of the other religions, because they all use Christianity uses it, but nobody believes it. Islam uses it. They sort of believe that they can do it. And so it's really an interesting conversation about how do you arrive in excellence in your spiritual walk. You assume you can get there first, and that takes a psychology that allows you to do it. Our psychology is weird when it comes to this. May I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. What a wonderful prayer. Okay, the mind of the Buddha. And so, as we've said, we've now moved out of the soul into the mind. That's the key. And how do we know we've moved into the mind? Look at the picture. Okay, we have a representation. Is this the happy Buddha? No. This is not the happy Buddha. This is Gautama. We know that because he's skinny. Okay? Now, they positioned the picture of this representation of the Buddha very carefully so that you're seeing what the stupa is, or the temple of Buddhism is. And what's it look like?
Well, there's three things there.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. And what's it look like?
Looks like a cat.
Which is covering
His head.
his head. Yeah, you're covering the mind of the Buddha. So the architecture of Buddhism, when they use this design, and I'm sure you saw these in Bali with stupas, probably looked architecturally very similar to that.
Yeah.
It may have come from Bali. I don't know where the picture came from. But the architects are trying to represent the mind of the Buddha and all Buddhists. So this is where your focus is. This is where your architecture is going to help you center, is in the mind. You're to seek refuge in the Buddha. Idols offer the same attraction and motivating power as the person represented. The same merit is accumulated if one offers reverence to the Buddha himself or a representation 2,500 years later. You get the same amount of merit from that. So that's pretty good math. You know, I can do it like the young man did by addressing the Buddha himself and learning a lot from him, and venerating and doing good things to it. Or you can do it today and get the same amount of merit. So the focus on the representation of the Buddha is very, very helpful. Likewise, to Buddhist texts, a representation of Buddhist speech. By us reading the Buddha's speech tonight is identical to him saying it. Okay? We tend not, in fact, in the ancient mind, when you read something like that, it is the Buddha in the room. It has that kind of power. When you tell a story, and Lynette is working on a story of a pangala and mythical creatures. The creature becomes alive when you tell the story. Simply by telling the story, there's actually, and so Buddhist texts, when you read them and say them out loud, come alive in the minds and the presence of the community. So stupas represent the Buddha's mind. Here is so much merit that it eventually has the power to clarify and purify all suffering. The awakened and luminous mind eliminate destructive passions, unruly appetite, confusing dreams, and forgotten sleep. Be free to offer compassion that is energized by justice for all. Non-attachment, non-aversion, non-intoxication, non-violence. I put a passage called The Mind of the Buddha and the Buddha nature in front of you. Okay? Let's just take some time and just, again, read the literature. And as we read it, we are bringing the Buddha alive in our reading. And we'll just go for 10 minutes or so. We'll see where this goes. Lynette, do you want to join us? Or do you want to work on your art?
Okay, I got my own feet.
You got your own one there. So we'll just do by paragraph, and when we'll go in a clockwise circle, and when it's your turn, read the next paragraph. The world is like a lotus pond, filled with many different kinds of plants. There are blossoms of many different tints, some white, some pink, some blue, some red, some yellow, some grow underwater. Some spread their leaves on the water, and some raise their leaves above the water. I'm going to say people. Among people, there are many more differences. There are differences of sex, but as for that, there is no essential difference of nature. For women, with proper training, may attain enlightenment precisely as men. Among humans, there are many kinds and degrees of mentality. There are wise, some are foolish, some are good-natured, some are bad-tempered, some are easily led, some are difficult to lead. Some possess pure minds, and some have minds that are defiled. But these differences are negligible when it comes to the attainment of enlightenment.
Be a trainer of elephants, one must possess 5 qualifications. He must have good health, he must have confidence, he must have diligence, he must have sincerity of purpose, and he must have wisdom. To follow Buddha's noble path to enlightenment, one must have the same 5 good qualities. If one has these qualities, whether he be man or woman, it is possible to gain enlightenment. It need not take long to learn the Buddhist teaching, for all humans possess a nature that has affinity for enlightenment.
In the practice of the way to enlightenment, people see the Buddha with their own eyes and believe in Buddha with their own minds. The eyes that see Buddha and the mind that believes Buddha are the same eyes and the same mind that, until that day, had wandered about in the world of suffering.
If the king is beset by bandits, before he attacks them, he must find out where their camp is. So, when one is beset by worldly passions, he should first find out their seat. If one is in a house, when he opens his eyes, he first notices the interior of the room, and only later will he see the view outside the window. In like manner, we cannot conceive the eye noticing external things before there is coordination of the eye with the things within the house.
If there is a mind within the body, it ought first to know the things of the body. But generally, people are interested in external things and seem to know and care little for the things within the body. If the mind was located outside the body, how could it keep in contact with the needs of the body? But in fact, the body feels what the mind knows, and the mind knows what the body feels. Therefore, it cannot be said that the human mind is outside or independent of the body. Then, where does the mind exist?
From the beginning, people, being conditioned by their karma, have wandered about in ignorance, being deluded by 2 fundamental things. First, they believe that discriminating mind, which lies at the root of this life of birth and death, was their real nature. And second, they did not know that, hidden behind the discriminating mind, they possessed a pure mind of enlightenment that was their true nature.
When a man closes his fist and raises his arm, the eye sees it and the mind discriminates it, but the mind that discriminates it is not the true mind. The discriminating mind is only a mind for the discrimination of imagined differences that greed and other moods relating to the self have created. The discriminating mind is subject to causes and conditions. It is empty of any self-substance. It is constantly changing. But since people believe that this mind is the real mind, the delusion enters into the causes and conditions that produce suffering.
Man opens his hand, and the mind perceives it. But what No, if the hand moves, the moving mind is only superficial appearance of mind. It is not true and fundamental mind.
Fundamentally, everyone has a pure, clean mind, but it is usually covered over by the defilement and dust of worldly desires, which have arisen in his circumstances. These worldly desires are not the essence of his nature. They are something added, like intruders or guests in a home. The moon is often hidden by clouds, but its purity remains untarnished. Therefore, people must not be deluded into thinking that these worldly desires, whether they be guest or defilement, are their own true mind. They must constantly remind themselves of this fact by continually awakening within themselves the pure and unchanging fundamental mind of enlightenment. As it is, being caught by changing worldly desires and being deluded by their own perverted ideas, they wander about in a world of delusions.
The disturbances and defilements of the human mind are aroused by greed and the reactions due to their changing circumstances. If the mind does not grasp and become attached to things as they pass, there will be no disturbed and defiled mind. The mind that is not disturbed by things as they occur, that remains pure and tranquil under all circumstances, is the true mind and should be the master.
We cannot say that an aim disappeared just because the guest was out of sight. Neither can we say that the true self has disappeared simply because of a mind of changeable ideas and absurd views, which have been aroused by the changing circumstances of life, has temporarily hidden it from attention. No, the human mind, with its burden of false imaginations and its bonds of attachment that change with changing conditions, is not the fundamental and true nature of the human spirit.
Let us think of the lecture hall that is light while the sun is shining, but dark after the sun goes down. We can think of the light departing with the sun and the dark coming with the night, but we cannot so think of the mind that perceives lightness and darkness. To whom does the lightness and darkness belong, that we may return them to an owner? The mind is susceptible to lightness, and darkness cannot be given back to anybody. It can only revert to its true nature, which is the fundamental nature of the human spirit. It's only a temporary mind that momentarily knows changes of lightness and darkness as the sun rises and sets. It's only a temporary mind that has different feelings from one moment to moment and the changing circumstances of life. It's not the real true mind. The fundamental and true mind, which realizes the lightness and darkness, is the universal essence of mind.
The temporary feelings of good and evil, love and hatred that have been aroused by surrounding and changing conditions are only momentary reactions that have had their cause in the guests and defilement accumulated by the human mind. Behind the desires and worldly passions which the mind entertains, there abides clear and undefiled the fundamental and true essence of mind.
Water is round in a round receptacle and square in a square one, but water has no particular shape. People often forget this fact. People see this in that, they like this and dislike that. They discriminate existence from non-existence. And then being caught in these entanglements and becoming attached to them suffer in consequence. If people would only give up their attachment to these imaginary and false discriminations, and would restore the purity of their fundamental minds, and both their true minds and their flesh would be free from the defilement and suffering, and would know the peacefulness that goes with that freedom.
Thank you. I think we'll end there. Hope I've encouraged you, though, to read the rest of it. It is I think the greatest part of education is finding out wonderful teachers. And I think of my teachers as I went through graduate school that were truly gifted. Can you imagine sitting there listening to the Buddha? Just, your brain's on steroids, just trying to figure out all this stuff. I mean, each paragraph is just filled with ideas that cause you to want more, and you can sense the thirst that he's causing in people as they're listening to these words. And so the human mind and the true mind, you get a sense of what he's trying to get at? You get a sense that there's some truth here. We've got to figure out. And when I was reading it this time, I was watching the shift from the same concepts of Hinduism with the defilement and going on of the Atman. And he's translated those to the mind and using the same concepts that we saw within Hinduism and the Atman of that same type of defilement. So I'm challenged as to why he made the shift. But that was what I was thinking of as I could, let you guys read it and I could think about things. Comments on the true mind? Hope you enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really liked this part that says, the discriminating mind is only a mind for the discrimination of imagined differences that greed and other moods relating to the self have created. The discriminating mind is subject to causes and conditions. It is empty of any self-substance. It is constantly changing. I feel like that's just really interesting to think about. And then also there is some Hindu thought that also says that too. I feel like I read in a scripture or somewhere in our studies that they thought that every night you went to sleep and you woke up and you're like a slightly different person after sleeping.
Yeah.
You're the same, but you're different.
Yeah.
And it's just that same nature or the same philosophy of the nature of the mind is always changing and it's fluctuating and it's not real, essentially.
And Taoism Lao Tzu would talk about how if you put your foot into the river and then take it out and then put it in again, it's a different river. It isn't just because it's water that it's the same. The currents are now different. The content is different. The leaves that are now there, it's different in real ways. And so these ideas are just wonderful as you're forced to realize that which I thought was the same. It's just water in a river. It's different. It's different. But that's what these philosophers have just enjoyed thinking about through the century. Rebirth. And so we're going to discover within Buddhism the concept of rebirth. Which is energy transformation from one form or body to another. And it's versus the second birth, which is rebirth into the same individual. So who talks more about second birth? Who talks about being born twice?
Oh, yeah, Christianity.
Christianity uses the second born idea. We also saw that in Hinduism when they go through their catechism, basically, and they're brought into the adult life. They're reborn into the adult life. So we're seeing it also in Hinduism. But within Buddhism, so what's happening? In Hinduism, the body and soul, you lose the body and the soul is reincarnated. In Buddhism, you have the body plus the mind, so when you lose the body, you have a fresh life at rebirth. And it's the mind that's transmitting. And the ideas, in the same way that the same ideas we're reading of the Buddha tonight are fresh and alive. That rebirth of ideas is what we're doing. it's being reborn. But it's more than that. It's that essence of the person that the mind has created through its usage of its brain cells. So we have the Buddhist law of impermanence, that oneself is transient. We've been talking about that tonight. But the Buddhist has 6 realms of rebirth. You have 3 good realms. You have the heavenly, where the God is, the demigod, and the human. And you have 3 evil realms. You can be reborn as an animal, a ghost, or a hell being. And so you get some interesting afterlife thought about good people go to good places, bad people go to bad places. You gotta answer the question: why is the tyrant that murdered millions of people, they can't just go to heaven? They got to go to a bad place. If you didn't say that, then all children would go, hey, it's more fun to be a tyrant. I think I'll do that, as opposed to, no, I think I'll be a good person and I'll go to heaven. So within Buddhism, you get this afterlife effect, even though and it's easy to begin critiquing Buddhism here now. It isn't just your mind, that your essence is transmitting to a new person. There's levels to that. And great karma takes you to the high one. Average karma takes you to this. You were a good person, but you go to a human level. Same with it. So good merit gains rebirth in good realms. And so enlightenment offers escape from the cycles of rebirth, and that's nirvana. Okay, comments on rebirth? So how do you learn the proper pathway? Well, you seek refuge in the Dharma. You read the teachings of the Buddha, and every sentence you read, every thought you read is apprehending the teachings, and so you're seeking that. And so by reading the human mind and the true mind, you're seeking refuge in the Dharma. You're understanding his perceptions of mind. You're realizing your mind didn't have that many layers before you read that passage. You just you didn't realize it, and that somehow that makes sense, and you begin seeking that. Well, how do you get there? Well, your meditation and your yoga is a natural way to seek that kind of mind awareness. And when you're in yoga postures or in meditation, the things that would create defilement are being pushed aside. And you don't have opportunity to run down and buy a chocolate bar at Albertsons. Even though you want it and your passions are taking you to that chocolate bar, in your meditative stances, you're protecting yourself. And you're allowing your mind to focus on other things. And it will then hopefully focus on others and what they need as well. So you're seeking refuge in the Dharma with the readings like what we just did. You seek refuge in the community, and that's the Sangha. And that's the companionship in the journey. The fellow refugees, the seekers, those that are working under the same guidelines, and they enjoy that sense of dignity together. They're a reminder to each other and a source of feedback, a continual reference point that creates a continual learning process. They're willing to work together, yet always independent. And it's clean fellowship, without expectation, without demand, yet it is fulfilling. And so the Sangha is a wonderful place. And for me, I always found neat people. You just go in and try and find somebody, one of the monks or the nuns, and just start up a conversation. They want to talk to you. So it's always been a fun experience to go to these spiritual centers. And because these are folks that want to have these kinds of conversations and teach you in an appropriate way. So I've always had fun doing that. And that's been the question that I've always had here in McCall is, how do we or who builds a Sangha for McCall? Just so that these kinds of elements can be built and developed. and it's always been an interesting project that I've encouraged to try and make sure that we have a community of folks that want to continue thinking like this. It's valuable, it's helpful, and helpful to others. Your community is better as you have more spiritual centers of development. And so that becomes valuable as well. Comments on the Sangha? Okay. Enlightenment in the 21st century. I've only got about 5 minutes and I'm going to work on this, so I'm just going to try and skip over it. We can come back to it a bit next week because it's sort of fascinating. America erodes the religious life. America's tough on religions. And so to the American social structure, or you could insert American business structure, or you could insert American political structure, erodes all domestic religions. Priests and pastors and monks tend to blend into society and not offer a distinct shift in lifestyle. We don't see a lot of monks in our lives that come in the robes and we just don't see them. They blend. How many of you have ever seen the Catholic priest that exists in our town? To my knowledge, I've never seen him, and I'm in a pretty good spot to find him. You know, I see a pastor, and I know all of them, maybe once a month. Maybe once a month. Celibacy of spiritual elites conflicts with social norms. We don't think that's a good thing for our spiritual elites to be celibate. We strongly encourage them to have a normal social life. That's just the American way. And spiritual elites through the generations have been normal family people. Well, that collides. That's the first precept of Buddhism is celibacy. The laity offer little distinction for social life. And so if you live in a community, you'd be hard pressed to say who's a Buddhist. Just like you're hard pressed to say who's a Christian. Muslims have got that figured out. They give you some clear signals that they're Muslims. So they make a purposeful point of doing it. But if you wore your yellow robe all over town, people would just say you're wearing your yellow scarf. They wouldn't make the distinction that you're thinking about Buddhism and representing it in a meaningful way. They just wouldn't make that. They're just not cued on that. The authority of spiritual elites is privatized. And so you don't find a pastor anymore that stands up in the town square and saying, let me tell you how bad things are. You get the funny guy with the sign, but we all ignore him. And you know, they've been forced into their boxes. So it isn't like the Buddhist monks that can go through the town while they're looking for food. They're also transmitting ideas about how to make the community better. And so they're in their churches or their synagogues or their mosques. They're telling their own people how to make things better. But they don't come into the public square and saying, only within the African community do their spiritual elites engage in the public space. They're really the last one in the American society where a Martin Luther King could change all of our lives as a pastor, because he could go into the public square. And African American pastors still go into the public square of their communities and have incredible impact in those communities. But nobody else gets that. Just the African American community gets that from their spiritual elites. There's a social pressure to conform to secular life. American Buddhism is modified Zen Buddhism. We've talked about that. The focus is on posture and meditation. Few monks to offer the higher discipline life. You don't get any examples of monks around you that are living these wonderful lives. They're wonderful people, and you'd like to be like that. So far in my 10 years in McCall, we've had one monk come through town. Now, that's it. That's all I've seen. Wonderful time. We all sat around, learned from him. It was a great experience. Once in 10 years have I seen a Buddhist monk arrive in McCall. how are you supposed to create a new life for anybody when you have no exemplars to develop? Minimal connection to vegetarianism, minimal connection of vegetarianism to nonviolence. We all love, our vegetarian lifestyles. My doc, every time I go, is in there, Brian, you need to have more of your, okay, I'll do that. But it isn't because I don't want to kill animals. It's I suppose I'm supposed to like lettuce. I don't know what it is. But so the disconnect between why we should be vegetarian and the nonviolence, therefore I'm not going to kill a cow because I think my cow is a grandmother, therefore I'm not going to kill my grandmother, therefore I think I'll be a vegetarian. That logic of the Hindu society and resulting Buddhist society is just lost in our vegetarianism of American society. There's minimal connection to controlling our sexual impulses. Sorry, but the pill changed everything. 1964, everything changed. Prior to that, your spirituality protected you from sexual diseases. That's why celibacy was so important. It was protecting you and your health. And so controlling sexual impulses was protecting you from all the diseases of sexuality. The minute we got the pill, it was like, just, whoa, everybody was running free and thinking this was just, and so we don't have that kind of control because we can take a pill and overwhelm it. Lying and alcohol control seems to be little above social restrictions. And that shift has really happened when it came to who can tell you how to live your life. 50 years ago, who would tell you how to live your life? Your dad and your pastor wasn't afraid to let you know how to live your life. So your parents and and so today, your parents hopefully will tell you that. But who do you go to get life adjustments to make your life better? Paya Lakes Medical Clinic. You check in and they say, Brian, you should be even more vegetarian. Brian, you should be on the Mediterranean diet. Brian, you should be exercising more. Well, those were things that your pastor would have said 50 years ago, and you'd have gone, wow, and he used it in a sermon and, layered it in, and life was different. Now, you go into your doctor, and they're the only ones you believe. You see the shift that's happened in American society? Our medical community has the moral authority to tell you how to change your life. They have taken that from the pastoral community that used to do it. So the monks of Buddhism would do the same thing. You need to bring your stuff to the temple and give, you need to put some food in front of the Buddhist statue. You need to stop, you need to be da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The Buddhist monks would say the same thing in getting your lives transformed. It's hard to do that in American society. So the key ideas and problems for Americans are the de-emphasis of supernatural notions, whether it's immortal soul, the God or God. The reason Buddhism has done really well is because of its focus on the mind. And Americans love focusing on the mind. And so that's been part of the American attachment to Buddhism, is its mind focus. It also, we've had a rejection of the theological impulses within American society. And so that sense of the supernatural, we're focused on the science. That's what's in front of me. What's this? What's that? And thank goodness for quantum theory. It's almost like going back into the supernatural. It is spooky stuff of quantum theory is almost like living in the supernatural again. Thank goodness we have quantum theory. But the problem seems to be something that causes reincarnation to function so that the soul rises and falls due to good and bad karma. Who's judging that? So there's some issues that we need to think about as well. That what's this karma stuff? How's an American supposed to think about karma? What a strange concept for American mind to get their head around. We have a very pragmatic inner science to fulfill mind's potential. the God of the preternatural bliss and wisdom and the moral graces. And meditation is that vehicle we've been talking about for enlightenment. But the problem is science has shown meditation's effect to be unreliable, no better than sitting. So, they're slowly learning about meditation, but they can't put their finger on what the value of meditation is. It's getting better, but it's still sort of like, a bit of hocus pocus here. And they worry about depression, anxiety, and other negative emotions that come from sitting alone all the time and doing your meditation. Anyway, I think it's a good time to stop there. And so for Americans, fascinating problem of how does American religion create enormous problems for Buddhism and every religion. Christianity is dramatically different in America than in Europe. Dramatically different, which means the American social structure has adjusted Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, name your religion, America messes with it. And that's fascinating to realize and see what's going on. Comments, questions, issues?
I think this was really interesting to talk about.
This stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting perspective to think about
Yeah.
how
Well,
our culture
yeah.
just waters down religion or anything. But,
Yeah. Well, and I think with the culture I grew up around, a lot of times I was seeing a huge disconnect of what they were like saying and then the things that are actually happening and the actual happiness of people and the way they're living their lives, and there's just a huge disconnect there. So to actually have to break this down is really interesting to me. Yeah.
Excellent night tonight, thank you. Next week, I'd like for you to make an oral report to all of us about your project, okay, where you're at, because we want to help. And we can help if we figure out where you are and where you're tripping. And so it's nice to hear that Kate she might have to buy some text because she can't find an awful lot in the general literature on her topic. And Kate, if this continues, change topics
Okay.
and present something different next week. So don't trip to the point of, and you fall apart.
Yeah.
Find another topic.
Okay.
Okay? So don't worry that, yes, you're approved on that topic.
Yeah.
You have freedom to shift, especially when research doesn't take you to the place you want it to be. Okay? So you all have that permission. And so please, you'll have a presentation next week, and we'd love to hear about where you're at and where you're wanting to go and what changes you're being forced to make. Any other issues, problems?
I was just going to show you my version of the completed homework.
Oh, okay.
As far as the comparison to Hinduism.
Oh, thank you. Therefore, there's something wrong with the template. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, it definitely shows it differently, but.
Yeah, I didn't have the distinction at all. So that last column, I think, maybe, or what might have happened is if I were to move my arrow, I may not have the PDF been looking at has broken it in half. And I bet I might have an arrow that goes this way instead of scrolling this way. So let me mess with it first to see whether that's there. And I just didn't have a slider that would take me over to the other half of the page.
Okay.
That might be what's going on. If not, I'd still send it to me as an email and because I have a much better PDF reader for general email than I probably do in Ireland.
Got it.
So send it to me anyway.
Okay.
Just to make sure I get it this week.
Right.
It's fun. Good to have you in the room, Ian.
Yeah, thank you.
Always been fun to have you on the screen, but it's fabulous to have you in the room.
Yeah, I've been grateful for the technology, but it's nice to be back.
So can Colton join us in the future, or is his life just getting too busy?
I think we might be on different paths now.
Interesting.
We have some news. Colt got a job in Salt Lake City. Actually, while you're down there.
Wow.
So we will be moving at the end of November.
You will be moving too?
Yes, I will be moving with him.
Oh,
Wow.
my goodness.
So he's got a lot to learn before he gets there. So I think he's probably gonna stop coming to class here so he can study his
Sure.
new materials and when he gets there.
Makes
But
sense.
I do want to follow this class through, and I'm still interested in the springtime class too. But
Okay.
yeah,
No, it's going to be designed to Zoom all the classes. We'll do
Okay.
this for all the, so wherever you are, we'd love to have you
Great.
as a participant in this. Yeah.
Wonderful.
We'll do it, all the classes will be like this.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
But that traumatizes me at so
I
many
know.
levels. I can't stand. She's moving to Salt Lake at the end of November.
Yeah.
That's bad.
That's
I
bad.
know.
This town cannot take this.
No, are you doing that?
Oh, man.
Colt got a job. No, dream job, pretty much. He started it.
Well, wonderful and terrible.
I know. A lot.
Blessings on you.
Thank you.
So, but that's the beauty of our technology is we can keep going.
Yeah.
We can keep going.
If you want to say.
And it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to find suffering and trauma. So
Yeah, that too.
that's,
You know?
and I would assume that TIP will have a TIP training in Salt Lake. I haven't gone to look it up yet, but my assumption is you'll probably have access to that in Salt Lake.
Okay.
So I would, you know, once you start seeing TIP Boise or TIP Treasure Valley, see if you could find the TIP Salt Lake.
Okay.
Okay, because that'll give you the same options that we're going to be presenting to people here.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you,
Enjoy to
Brian.
be with you.
Like that.
Enjoy the journey.
Thank you so much.
Okay. It's in your email. So
Thank you.